Welcome to GouldFish on Games, where it seems we can't settle into a groove because today's game decided to shake the formula up. So let's check out Settlers 3. Made and published by Blue Byte back in 1998, it proudly boasts of having better land, sea and multiplayer combat on the box. Inside, we get the typical marketing material, as well as the game on 2 CDs and just a jewel case manual. Long gone are the detailed booklets and personal messages of the previous games. We are treated to an animated intro which has once again switched up the art style, and tells the story of 3 gods who have become so lazy that the creator of all gods tells them to clean their acts up and orders them to start being dicks to humans again. Thanks a lot, mate. This hints at the first major shake-up to the series. There are now 3 separate races, and you'll get campaigns for all of them. So we have the Romans with their god Jupiter, the Egyptians with their god Horus, and finally the Asians with their god Chi-Yu, with each of them having 8 missions, with the odd cutscene thrown in now and then to show them getting their god mojo back. If you've seen my previous videos on Settlers, you'll notice quite a bit has changed once we get in-game. The graphics now have this pre-rendered 3D look to them, but are still drawn as sprites, but we do have this far more detailed terrain than we've ever seen before. We now have this RTS style bar rather than the windowing system we had before, though it's on the left rather than the right. And this isn't the only thing that has been inspired by the rise of the RTS genre, but we'll get to that later on. The castles are also completely gone in this version. People and resources now exist directly on the map, and only go inside buildings when they're being used. But possibly the biggest change is the fact you no longer have to build roads. You just place a building down and the settler will go and get to work. And as a purely visual thing, if the settler walks over the same area repeatedly, they'll start to wear these paths into the terrain. It looks cool, but doesn't really help in any way. But the basics of the game is still the same. You need to cut down trees that will be processed at the mill, which can then be used for building. But due to the changes in the various races, you'll have to prioritise different resources. The Romans need a mix of wood and stone, where the Egyptians will need far more stone, and the Asians will need far more wood. It is a settlers game after all, so managing your economy is very important. People have also become a very important resource, and it's very easy to run out of them if you're not careful. As they won't slowly spawn as they used to, now they can only be gotten by building new houses. The larger the house, the more settlers you'll get, and they'll just flow forth once they're built, and they'll just mill around in that area until there's a need for them. All the races get some standard buildings, but they will all look completely different. But there are a few unique ones to each race. The Romans gain the ability to take wood and make charcoal, which can be a real boon when you start to run low from mining. The Egyptians get to mine gems, which gives them a second resource for trying to shore up their troops. And the Asians get the sulfur mine, which becomes part of the chain of their siege weapon. And this seems like a good place to talk about the changes they made to the combat. There are now 3 types of soldier: the classic swordman, the spearman, and the archer. Swordsmen tend to be best with archers as they can quickly close ground and attack, where pikes are great at defence. And archers are your long range attack and tend to form large parts of your army, but you can't depend on them as they can't take over buildings. On top of the new types, you also now have direct control over them, so you can freely move them around the map, though you can request extra units to go defend buildings, with archers standing on the battlements taking on units before they even reach your door. Soldiers are not the only unit you get direct control over. You can now select the geologist and tell him where to go work. New to this game is the thief, which can walk around inside enemy territory disguised as one of them, and pick up their resources from the ground and bring them back. But if they get too close to a military unit, they will be discovered and attacked. Soldiers also now have a health bar, which can only be restored by another new unit, the healer. So make sure you build some of the healing huts close to your battle lines. The static catapults that you could build have now been replaced with the mobile siege weapons, and these are unique to each race. The Roman gets the portable catapult, which will require stone as the ammo. The Egyptians get the ballista, and will require lots of wood. And the Asians get the cannon, but you'll also need to produce gunpowder. These are quite useful, but are more limited than you'd actually expect, as while they can freely move around, they are easily blocked by trees, rocks and other natural barriers. And they also have to be reloaded after a number of shots, so you'll have to keep moving them back and forth for them to be useful. They also added the priest, who forms part of a much larger chain. Due to having gods in this game, we now have mana, which we get by giving gifts to the gods in the form of booze. The Romans have to grow grapes which turn into wine. The Egyptians take wheat and make beer, and the Asians need to grow rice which makes rice wine. All of these then have to be offered up in temples, which will then slowly be used up and become mana. This mana can then be used to level up your various soldier types, or you can use your priest to go out and perform miracles. These mostly differ between the various races, but consistently the more you use a spell, the more it'll end up costing. So you can try and spam Gift from the Gods, but it won't take long before it's far too expensive for you to use. But a well placed spell can make all the difference, as you can make land usable, or cast a spell on your troops to make them invulnerable. As you can imagine, these become far more important the further into the game you go, and you have to deal with your enemy using them as well. And as gold is no longer used to train up your armies, it returns to the job of the first game, which is that the more gold you have in a storage area, the stronger your troops will perform outside of your territory. Inside there will always be fighting at 100%, but outside it all comes down to that magic value that you can find on one of the menus. Boats also got overhauled. They are now more directly controlled, with the user having to set up routes while specifying which goods they want to be transported and of how much. You'll also get a separate transport ship, which you can use to transport your troops and pioneers around if you want to take over new lands, as the pioneers can plant these area markers to grow your territory without the need for military buildings, but that area becomes far more susceptible to being taken over by enemy emplacements, and once you've taken over enough area that you can start working, you can turn them back into simple settlers so they can get on with doing their job. With the game allowing you far more direct control over your armies, the game pivoted towards being more of an RTS game with more complex base building. You will still need to get all the various chains running nicely so you can build up your army, but that is your ultimate goal, building up a large fighting force so you can stomp over your enemy. And as the level progresses, you'll find there's less incentive to take over your opponent's territory, as you can just move your troops on. Plus, due to having one settler carrying an item from start to end, it can take some time to get any new bounty from their old land back into yours where it might be more useful. This is also true of having remote areas in your own kingdom. You can help to improve the flow by using donkeys, as they act as land ships, so you have to set up routes and tell them which type of goods you want to move. But it does feel odd that they took away some of the fiddly but fun bits like laying down roads, only to introduce new fiddly but less fun mechanics, such as the donkeys. Though it is nice to be able to look across the world and be able to see every single settler, worker and resource on the map. The game also got 2 expansions, the big one being the Amazon expansion, which added a brand new race, the Amazons, which have their own look and style. This includes 2 new campaigns, which you either play as the Amazons trying to take over the world, or as the other races trying to stop them. Both expansions also included a level editor, and the first mission CD also included extra maps and missions for the original races. And while it's not my favourite entry into the series, I do respect a game that decides to shake the gameplay up. And if you want to check it out, it's pretty easy to do so, as you can get the classic version on GOG, or you can get the remastered History Edition on Uplay, which is what I used for this video. And until next time, I was the GouldFish, Those were settlers who didn't need roads where they were going, and this was GouldFish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider helping me grow my supply chains. You can do that by liking, sharing and subscribing to the channel, or consider checking out one of my other videos.